Earthbound by Artemis Greenleaf. Chapter 5. Nick Niven. "Let go!" I yelled. It did not. I turned to see that there was a man holding on to me, a man with sharp features and blueberry skin. Wild, shaggy hair hung in his eyes, which were black from edge to edge. Another like him had hold of Connell. Two more stood ready to attack us. "Don't struggle, Skylar. These are the good neighbours, elves. They could tear you apart with the flick of a wrist." They led us to the edge of the sea. "On your knees," snarled the elf holding Connell. He knelt down, and I did the same. I was too scared not to. I didn't understand how we could be trapped like this. How could something grab a ghost? Suddenly, each elf went down on one knee and bowed his head. No one told me I had to bow my head, so when I heard the rustling of fabric, I looked toward the sound. A woman was strolling towards us, her long dress hissing like tall grass in the wind whenever she moved. She was beautiful, in a kind of scary way. Her large eyes were silver white, shining like moonlight. Her skin was sky blue and alabaster smooth. Blue-black hair curled down her slim waist. Her dress was the colour of dusk, a shimmering, shifting grey. A deep red jewel crowned the tall sceptre she carried. When she came even with us, she said, "You may rise." The two elves stood up and dragged us to our feet. "Two human wraiths," she said, inspecting us. "What is your business here?" she asked Connell. Connell bowed his head. "Your Highness, if it pleases you, we ask your leave to catch the ferry yonder." "The ferry? What do the dead need with a ferry?" Her voice dripped with disdain. "Please, Your Highness, we have an engagement on Clare Island." Connell kept his head bowed and didn't look at her. "An engagement? With whom?" "Your Highness, it is only the shade of me poor old auntie." "I see. Await my judgment." She turned and stalked to the edge of the sea, glaring at the orange sun drowning on the horizon. "Who's that, Connell?" I whispered. "She has many names, but in this part of the world she's called Nick Niven. She's the queen of the dark fairies of Elfheim." "That doesn't sound good." "If luck be on our side, she will not bother with us such as us, and set us free." "And if not?" "Best not think on it." Nick Niven returned. "Bring them," she said to the elf-men. We might as well have been sacks of flour to her. We were marched to a low hill. 3 times Nick Niven tapped it with her sceptre. The ground rumbled, and a perfect rectangle of grass slid away into the hill. The elves shoved us inside the doorway and prodded us down the hall. The passageway was so utterly black that I couldn't tell if it was wide or narrow. A feeble torch flickered at the end of it, too far away to do us any good. When we got to the torch, the elves circled us to the left. Instantly, a sallow twilight flooded the room. We were in Nick Niven's feast hall. Dozens of fairies sat at long tables, clacking steins together eating food with their fingers and cackling. Some had the blue skin and sharp features of the dark elves. Some were green with spiky hair. Others were brown with raggedy clothes. I did notice a few wearing peculiar red caps. Connell's mouth hung open. "Skylar, don't eat anything," he was able to stammer after a few moments. Like, that's a problem. I haven't eaten anything in 8 years. Why would I start now? "Truly, Skylar, it is. This food seems like any food you would be used to eating when you ate food. But really it has no substance. Believe me when I tell you, you will be sorely tempted to taste something. But if you eat the food of this place, you are bound to it. You won't be able to leave. Ever." "But..." "No buts, Skylar. I mean it. Not a morsel. Fairy magic is strange stuff." A wave of silence rippled down the throng as Nick Niven moved towards her throne. Fairies put down their food and got down on one knee, bowing to her as she approached. When she was seated, they all started back up with the feasting. One of the things I miss most about being alive is fresh strawberries. Really good ones are cool and firm, with just enough juice to spatter on your shirt when you bite into them. As soon as I thought this, I noticed a large dish of strawberries sitting on the table nearest me. I thought of the sweet scent of them. As if by remembering, I could actually smell them. They were big fat strawberries, just the perfect shade of red. I turned to the berries. It was then I noticed the elf holding me was gone, so I walked over to them. An elf, and this one looked female, picked up the bowl and said, "Take as many as you like." I picked one up. It looked exactly like a strawberry should, bumpy with a crown of fresh green leaves. I remembered the flavour of strawberries, a tiny bit tart, mostly sweet. I just wanted to taste it, to see if I could, and to see if it was as good as I remembered. "Skylar, no!" Connell bellowed at me from across the room. Startled, I turned to look at him and I dropped the berry. The spell was broken. Connell came to me as fast as he could, dodging dancing elves. "Why do you yell at me? It was just a berry." A tiny gust of anger swirled up from my belly to my heart. I'd wanted so much to taste that perfect berry, and he ruined it. "Skylar, did you not hear me tell you? You must not eat anything here. It will bind you to this place and you can never leave. There's nothing for you here but slavery." Oh, I wasn't sure I believed him, and it didn't seem like a bad place to be stuck. Everyone seemed happy, really happy. I didn't understand why they were called the Dark Fairies, other than maybe they had blue skin and black hair. Nick Niven clapped her hands, and the elves got quiet. They cleared a space around her bejeweled throne. Some music started playing. It seemed oddly familiar to me, but I just couldn't place it. 2 elves, a male and a female, came out wearing some grand costumes. They did a dance that was a bit like a ballet, but more beautiful. The most famous ballerinas could only dream of being so graceful. I could not take my eyes off them. Once they had finished and taken their bows, Nick Niven said, "Let our guests come forward." Connell and I approached the throne. Connell knelt on one knee, bowing his head. I did the same. "I have decided to help you." "Thank you, Your Highness," said Connell, keeping his eyes downcast. "Rise," she said, then looked past us to a handful of elves. "Dress them and take them outside." I was led by 3 females and Connell by 3 males. Us girls went to a side chamber that was filled with flowers. The elves didn't say a word to me, but they put a long white robe over my clothes. They brushed and braided my hair and put a wreath of daffodils on my head. When Niven decides to help you, she goes all out. The 3 elfettes and I returned to the main chamber. Connell was already there. He was also wearing a white robe and a crown of daffodils. We followed an elf in flowing white robes out of the feast hall. It was full dark now. The elf walked to the edge of the sea, then stopped. He gestured for us to stand beside him, one on either side. Then he moved away, leaving us on the cliff's edge, and opened a fat old book he was carrying. "I don't like this," whispered Connell. "I'm sure he's just going to magic us over to Clare Island." The elf said, "This is from one of your books, as is customary in your rituals. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, ensure of the certain hope of resurrection into eternal life." Connell and I looked at each other. "That's what they said at my funeral," I whispered to him. "I told you I didn't like this." Niven stepped forward. "Into the sea with you. Be gone." "I thought you said you were going to help us," I cried. She raised one eyebrow. "I am helping you. You exist between life and death, belonging to neither. Finish your journey to the other side." "No, you don't understand." I couldn't go now. Who would look after Sheridan? "Do not dare to speak to me again in such a way. Complete your transition. That is what you need more than schemes with Granwal Niwala." "Your Highness, you're so clever. How did you guess it?" asked Connell. I could see him glancing into the water. And why was he smiling? "We saw you coming down the lay. Who else would you be travelling so far to meet at Clare Island? It's only her there that might be of interest to ghosts. You humans overestimate your value to this world. As for you two, your time here is done." With that, she took her scepter and pushed us over the low cliff into the sea. Earthbound by Artemis Greenleaf. This work is licensed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivative Works 3.0 United States license. Environmental sound effects used in this podcast were provided by www.freesound.org. Please check artemisgreenleaf.com for details of specific samples used. If you'd like to leave a comment or learn more about the other projects in progress, please go to www.artemisgreenleaf.com. Dandelion girl, watch her play on a summer's